If you are someone who still goes to put ice on an injured area, it's time to stop. Now that might sound strange coming from a physiotherapist, despite us having spent the best part of the last 40 to 50 years recommending ice for acute injuries. But what we've come to understand more recently is that despite our best intentions, icing an acute injury might actually be doing the opposite to what we've been asking it to do. Because what we've come to understand more recently is that the reasons why we tend to ice injured tissue tends to be completely different to what our body is trying to do in order to heal that injured tissue quickly and more optimally. Instead of speeding up the healing process, it may actually be putting a pause on that healing process and slowing it down. And the reasons for this are still relatively obvious, but they do take a slight shift in perspective to understand what's potentially really going on and what we should be doing instead. And as you may know, the reasons why we have always promoted icing an acute injury generally boil down to three main things. We want to try and help reduce pain, reduce inflammation, and reduce swelling. And we've tried to limit these three things under the proviso that it does expedite that healing process, and we've also assumed that we know better than the body. Because what's very interesting about this conversation is that pain, swelling, and inflammation are all there for a reason. And limiting any one of these three things has the potential to go against what your body is innately trying to do on its own, and again has the potential to slow down the very thing that you're trying to speed up. And one of the interesting ideas that we attach to icing an injury is that we're trying to reduce blood flow to the area. But what's interesting about this is by decreasing the temperature and causing that vasoconstriction of the blood vessels, again, it is impeding the body's ability to transport the important nutrients and chemicals to the area to promote optimal healing. So if we're trying to ice an area in the hope of decreasing blood flow to that area, we're also decreasing the body's ability to transport the things that it needs to get to the area efficiently. And what's really interesting about this is that once you take the ice pack off an injured area, it will reheat again, it will come back to the level that it needs to, and that process will just kick back into gear again once the handbrake is taken off. So delving into things a little bit deeper, when looking at pain, swelling, and inflammation, we know that these are a normal part of the healing process. Pain is a very important thing to respect that gives us boundaries as to what our body, our brain, and our nervous system are comfortable doing at any point in time. And while we've talked about a lot on the channel where pain isn't necessarily the most reliable indicator of how damaged you are or how well something is progressing, because you can have absolutely no pain and still be damaged and injured, and you can have absolutely no damage and injury and still have a ton of pain that doesn't go away. But if we think of pain as our body's way of telling us what is a general boundary to what we should and shouldn't be doing, by numbing the area, it does reduce our body's ability to understand what is safe and what is a threat to that injured tissue and the healing process. And this whole conversation isn't to say that ice doesn't do the thing that we're expecting it to do. The main idea is that the thing we're expecting it to do is the opposite of what we should be getting it to do to expedite that healing process. And in the context of pain, ice is shown to be a fantastic pain reliever or a pain reducer post-injury. So depending on the situation, if your goal isn't healing as quickly as possible and as efficiently as possible, and your pain is out of control and stopping you from sleeping, stopping you from working, stopping you from doing the things that make you happy or the things that you have to do day to day, we can then make an adult considered decision based on what is more important to you in that moment in time. Is it pain relief or is it expediting that healing process? But if we do tend to ice that tissue for pain relief, we also need to understand that there may be consequences attached to the duration of how quickly that tissue heals and how quickly we can get you back to doing the things that you enjoy doing. And this becomes especially relevant if we're trying to ice to help settle down swelling and inflammation. Because when we look at swelling in isolation, swelling isn't a good or a bad thing. Too much swelling can certainly incapacitate the tissue, it can reduce the effectiveness of your muscles, it can increase pain, it can decrease function, but all swelling tends to be is a buildup of waste at the end of the inflammatory cycle that isn't removed efficiently enough. And what ice can tend to do here is that it can make that congestion more viscous and harder for it to go away. And especially if you're pairing up an ice pack with a lack of movement or rest, we know that movement is the only way that your tissue can get rid of congestion and swelling swelling via that passive lymphatic system, where that lymphatic system is the waste disposal system of the body that requires muscular contraction and muscular activation to flush that tissue up against gravity and to flush that congestion and swelling out of the area. So not only does icing an injured tissue decrease our body's pain perception and potentially decrease our ability to get rid of swelling, but in terms of inflammation, if you consult any textbook on physiology, you'll know that the only way that the body can progress to the healing phase is to bypass through the inflammatory stage. You have to enter the tunnel at the inflamed stage to come out at the healing stage. So by trying to impede that inflammation, we are genuinely stopping our body from progressing through that healing stage to the best of its ability. So what's really important to understand is that we do need some form of inflammation to promote the healing process to get you to where you need to be as quickly as possible. And this idea of applying an ice pack to the injured area to decrease the things that the body's trying to do in terms of pain, swelling, and inflammation in order to expedite that healing process, and assuming that the body has it wrong, is a perspective that we've probably had for far too long. So what's really important is if we can take a step back and realize that the things that happen when you place ice on injured tissue is actually divorced from what our body is actually trying to do to heal that tissue on its own, then we can start to look at other things that don't impede the body's ability to do what it's trying to do and lean more towards things that promote and facilitate and hopefully expedite what our body is trying to do to optimize that healing process. But we actually want to take a step back and understand a slightly broader perspective to try and find a better way to do things that maybe isn't doing the opposite of what we want it to do. So ultimately, despite the use of ice being almost the default protocol to help manage acute injuries, it's time to consider moving on. As I said before, ice can be effective if you are genuinely in pain and just pain relief is your sole goal from using an ice pack. But if you have any time crunch associated with how quickly you want to get back to the thing that you were doing safely and comfortably, we need to consider moving away from ice and moving towards other things that again respect the body's ability to do the thing that it's trying to do. So once again, I genuinely hope that was helpful. Let me know if it was. I hope to see you next time.